Thus Spake Zarathustra. A book for all and none. By Friedrich Nietzsche. Zarathustra's Discourses. 1. The Three Metamorphoses. Three metamorphoses of the spirit do I designate to you, how the spirit becometh a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Many heavy things are there for the spirit, the strong load-bearing spirit, in which reverence dwelleth, for the heavy, and the heaviest longeth its strength. What is heavy? So asketh the load-bearing spirit, then kneeleth it down like the camel, and wanteth to be well laden. What is the heaviest thing, ye heroes? Asketh the load-bearing spirit, that I may take it upon me and rejoice in my strength. Is it not this, to humiliate oneself in order to mortify one's pride? To exhibit one's folly in order to mock at one's wisdom? Or is it this, to desert our cause when it celebrated its triumph? To ascend high mountains to tempt the tempter? Or is it this, to feed on the acorns and grass of knowledge, and for the sake of truth to suffer hunger of soul? Or is it this, to be sick and dismiss comforters, and make friends of the deaf, who never hear thy requests? Or is it this, to go into foul water when it is the water of truth, and not disclaim cold frogs and hot toads? Or is it this, to love those who despise us, and give one's hand to the phantom when it is going to frighten us? All these heaviest things the load-bearing spirit taketh upon itself, and like the camel, which, when laden, hasteneth into the wilderness, so hasteneth the spirit into its wilderness. But in the loneliest wilderness happeneth the second metamorphosis, here the spirit becometh a lion, freedom will it capture, and lordship in its own wilderness. Its last lord it here seeketh, hostile will it be to him, and to its last god, or for victory will it struggle with the great dragon. What is the great dragon which the spirit is no longer inclined to call Lord and God? Thou shalt, is the great dragon called. But the spirit of the lion saith, I will. Thou shalt, lead in its path, sparkling with gold, a scale-covered beast, and on every scale glittereth golden, thou shalt. The values of 1,000 years glitter on those scales, and thus speaketh the mightiest of all dragons, all the values of things glitter on me. All values have already been created, and all created values do I represent. Verily, there shall be no I will any more. Thus speaketh the dragon. My brethren, wherefore is there need of the lion in the spirit? Why sufficeth not the beast of burden, which renounceth and is reverent? To create new values that even the lion cannot yet accomplish, but to create itself freedom for new creating, that can the might of the lion do. To create itself freedom, and give a holy nay even unto duty, for that, my brethren, there is need of the lion. To assume the right to new values, that is the most formidable assumption for a load-bearing and reverent spirit. Verily, unto such a spirit it is praying, and the work of a beast of prey. As its holiest, it once loved thou shalt, now is it forced to find illusion and arbitrariness even in the holiest things, that it may capture freedom from its love. The lion is needed for this capture. But tell me, my brethren, what the child can do, which even the lion could not do. Why had the praying lion still to become a child? Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a fast movement, a holy year. For the game of creating, my brethren, there is needed a holy year unto life, its own will, willeth now the spirit, his own world winneth the world's outcast. Three metamorphoses of the spirit have I designated to you, how the spirit became a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. Thus spake Zarathustra. And at that time he abode in the town which is called the Pied Cow. 2. The academic chairs of virtue. People commended unto Zarathustra a wise man, as one who could discourse well about sleep and virtue. Greatly was he honored and rewarded for it, and all the youths sat before his chair. To him went Zarathustra, and sat among the youths before his chair. And thus spake the wise man. Respect and modesty in presence of sleep. That is the first thing. And to go out of the way of all who sleep badly and keep awake at night. Modest is even the thief in presence of sleep, he always stealeth softly through the night. Immodest, however, is the night watchman, immodestly he carrieth his horn. No small art is it to sleep, it is necessary for that purpose to keep awake all day. 10 times a day must thou overcome thyself that causeth wholesome weariness, and is poppy to the soul. 10 times must thou reconcile again with thyself, for overcoming is bitterness, and badly sleep the unreconciled. 10 truths must thou find during the day, otherwise wilt thou seek truth during the night, and thy soul will have been hungry. 10 times must thou laugh during the day, and be cheerful, otherwise thy stomach, the father of affliction, will disturb thee in the night. Few people know it, but one must have all the virtues in order to sleep well. Shall I bear false witness? Shall I commit adultery? Shall I covet my neighbor's maidservant? All that would ill accord with good sleep. And even if one have all the virtues, there is still one thing needful, to send the virtues themselves to sleep at the right time, that they may not quarrel with one another, the good females. And about thee, thou unhappy one, peace with God and thy neighbor, so desireth good sleep. And peace also with thy neighbor's devil. Otherwise it will haunt thee in the night. Honor to the government, and obedience, and also to the crooked government. So desireth good sleep. How can I help it, if power like to walk on crooked legs? He who leadeth his sheep to the greenest pasture, shall always be for me the best shepherd, so that it accord with good sleep. Many honors I want not, nor great treasures, they excite the spleen. But it is bad sleeping without a good name and a little treasure. A small company is more welcome to me than a bad one, but they must come and go at the right time, so that it accord with good sleep. Well, also, do the poor in spirit please me, they promote sleep. Blessed are they, especially if one always give in to them. Thus possess the day unto the virtuous. When night cometh, then take a good care not to summon sleep. It disliketh to be summoned, sleep, the lord of the virtues. But I think of what I have done and thought during the day. Thus ruminating, patient as a cow, I ask myself, what were thy 10 overcomings? And what were the 10 reconciliations, and the 10 truths, and the 10 laughters with which my heart enjoyed itself? Thus pondering, and cradled by 40 thoughts, it overtaketh me all at once, sleep, the unsummoned, the lord of the virtues. Sleep tappeth on mine eye, and it turneth heavy. Sleep toucheth my mouth, and it remaineth open. Verily, on soft souls doth it come to me, the dearest of thieves, and stealeth from me my thoughts. Stupid do I then stand, like this academic chair. But not much longer do I then stand, I already lie. When Zarathustra heard the wise man thus speak, he laughed in his heart, for thereby had a light dawned upon him. And thus spake he to his heart. A fool seemeth this wise man with his 40 thoughts, but I believe he knoweth well how to sleep. Happy even is he who liveth near this wise man. Such sleep is contagious, even through a thick wall it is contagious. A magic resideth even in his academic chair. And not in vain did the youth sit before the preacher of virtue. His wisdom is to keep awake in order to sleep well. And verily, if life had no sense, and had I to choose nonsense, this would be the desirablest nonsense for me also. Now know I well what people sought formerly above all else when they sought teachers of virtue. Good sleep they sought for themselves, and poppy-head virtues to promote it. To all those beloved sages of the academic chairs, wisdom was sleep without dreams, they knew no higher significance of life. Even at present, to be sure, there are some like this preacher of virtue, and not always so honorable, but their time is past. And not much longer do they stand, there they already lie. Blessed are those drowsy ones, for they shall soon nod to sleep. Thus spake Zarathustra. 3. Backworldsmen. Once on a time, Zarathustra also cast his fancy beyond man, like all backwoodsmen. The work of a suffering and tortured God did the world then seem to me. The dream and diction of a God did the world then seem to me, colored vapors before the eyes of a divinely dissatisfied one. Good and evil, and joy and woe, and I and thou, colored vapors did they seem to me before creative eyes. The Creator wished to look away from himself, thereupon he created the world. Intoxicating joy is it for the sufferer to look away from his suffering and forget himself. Intoxicating joy and self-forgetting did the world once seem to me. This world, the eternally imperfect, an eternal contradictions image and imperfect image, an intoxicating joy to its imperfect creator, thus did the world once seem to me. Thus, once on a time, did I also cast my fancy beyond man, like all backwoodsmen. Beyond man, forsooth. Ye brethren, that God whom I created was human work and human madness, like all the gods. A man was he, and only a poor fragment of a man and ego. Out of mine own ashes and glow it came unto me, that phantom. And verily, it came not unto me from the beyond. What happened, my brethren? I surpassed myself, the suffering one, I carried mine own ashes to the mountain, the brighter flame I contrived for myself. And lo! Thereupon the phantom withdrew from me. To me the convalescent would it now be suffering and torment to believe in such phantoms, suffering would it now be to me, and humiliation. Thus speak I to backwoodsmen. Suffering was it, and impotence, that created all backwards, when the short madness of happiness, which only the greatest sufferer experienceth. Weariness, which seeketh to get to the ultimate with one leap, with a death leap, a poor ignorant weariness, unwilling even to will any longer, that created all gods and backwards. Believe me, my brethren. It was the body which despaired of the body, it groped with the fingers of the infatuated spirit at the ultimate walls. Believe me, my brethren. It was the body which despaired of the earth, it had the bowels of existence speaking unto it. And then it sought to get through the ultimate walls with its head, and not with its head only, into the other world. But that other world is well concealed from man, that dehumanized, inhuman world, which is a celestial knot, and the bowels of existence do not speak unto man, except as man. Verily, it is difficult to prove all being, and hard to make it speak. Tell me, ye brethren, is not the strangest of all things best proved? Yet this ego, with its contradiction and perplexity, speaketh most uprightly of its being, this creating, willing, evaluating ego, which is the measure and value of things. And this most upright existence, the ego, it speaketh of the body, and still implete the body, even when it museth and raveth and fluttereth with broken wings. Always more uprightly learneth it to speak, the ego, and the more it learneth, the more doth it find titles and honors for the body and the earth. A new pride taught me mine ego, and that teach I unto men, no longer to thrust one's head into the sand of celestial things, but to carry it freely, a terrestrial head, which giveth meaning to the earth. A new will teach I unto men, to choose that path which man hath followed blindly, and to approve of it, and no longer to slink aside from it, like the sick and perishing. The sick and perishing, it was they who despised the body and the earth, and invented the heavenly world, and the redeeming blood drops, but even those sweet and sad poisons they borrowed from the body and the earth. From their misery they sought escape, and the stars were too remote for them. Then they sighed, oh that there were heavenly paths by which to steal into another existence and into happiness. Then they contrived for themselves their bypaths and bloody draughts. Beyond the sphere of their body and this earth they now fancied themselves transported, these ungrateful ones. But to what did they owe the convulsion and rapture of their transport? To their body and this earth. Gentle is Zarathustra to the sickly. Verily, he is not indignant at their modes of consolation and ingratitude. May they become convalescents and overcomers, and create higher bodies for themselves. Neither is Zarathustra indignant at a convalescent who looketh tenderly on his delusions, and at midnight stealeth round the grave of his God, but sickness and a sick frame remain even in his tears. Many sickly ones have there always been among those who muse and languish for God, or violently they hate the discerning ones, and the latest of virtues, which is uprightness. Backward they always gaze toward dark ages, then, indeed, were delusion and faith something different. Raving of the reason was likeness to God, and doubt was sin. Too well do I know those godlike ones, they insist on being believed in, and that doubt is sin. Too well, also, do I know what they themselves most believe in. Verily, it's not in backwards and redeeming blood drops, but in the body do they also believe most, and their own body is for them the thing in itself. But it is a sickly thing to them, and gladly would they get out of their skin. Therefore hearken they to the preachers of death, and themselves preach backwards. Hearken rather, my brethren, to the voice of the healthy body, it is a more upright and pure voice. More uprightly and purely speaketh the healthy body, perfect and square-built, and it speaketh of the meaning of the earth. Thus spake Zarathustra. 4. The despisers of the body. To the despisers of the body will I speak my word. I wish them neither to learn afresh nor teach anew, but only to bid farewell to their own bodies, and thus be dumb. Body am I, and soul, so said the child. And why should one not speak like children? But the awakened one, the knowing one, saith, Body am I entirely, and nothing more, and soul is only the name of something in the body. The body is a big sagacity, a plurality with one sense, a war and a peace, a flock and a shepherd. An instrument of thy body is also thy little sagacity, my brother, which thou carriest, spirit, a little instrument and plaything of thy big sagacity. Ego, sayest thou, and art proud of that word. But the greater thing, in which thou art unwilling to believe, is thy body with its big sagacity. It saith not, ego, but doeth it. What the sense feeleth, what the spirit discerneth, hath never its end in itself. But sense and spirit would fain persuade thee that they are the end of all things, so vain are they. Instruments and playthings are sense and spirit, behind them there is still the self. The self seeketh with the eyes of the senses, it hearkeneth also with the ears of the spirit. Ever hearkeneth the self, and seeketh, it compareth, mastereth, conquereth, and destroyeth. It ruleth, and is also the ego's ruler. Behind thy thoughts and feelings, my brother, there is a mighty Lord, an unknown sage, it is called self, it dwelleth in thy body, it is thy body. There is more sagacity in thy body than in thy best wisdom. And who then knoweth why thy body requireth just thy best wisdom? Thyself laugheth at thine ego, and its proud prancings. What are these prancings and flights of thought unto me, it saith to itself? A byway to my purpose. I am the leading string of the ego, and the prompter of its notions. The self saith unto the ego, feel pain. And thereupon it suffereth, and think how it may put an end thereto, and for that very purpose it is meant to think. The self saith unto the ego, feel pleasure. Thereupon it rejoiceth, and think how it may oft times rejoice, and for that very purpose it is meant to think. To the despisers of the body will I speak a word. That they despise is caused by their esteem. What is it that created esteeming and despising and worth and will? The creating self created for itself esteeming and despising, it created for itself joy and woe. The creating body created for itself spirit as a hand to its will. Even in your folly and despising ye each serve yourself, ye despisers of the body. I tell you, your very self wanteth to die, and turneth away from life. No longer can yourself do that which it desireth most, create beyond itself. That is what it desireth most, that is all its fervor. But it is now too late to do so, so yourself wisheth to succumb, ye despisers of the body. To succumb, so wisheth yourself, and therefore have ye become despisers of the body. For ye can no longer create beyond yourselves. And therefore are ye now angry with life and with the earth. And unconscious envy is in the sidelong look of your contempt. I go not your way, ye despisers of the body. Ye are no bridges for me to the Superman. Thus spake Zarathustra. 5. Joys and passions. My brother, when thou hast a virtue, and it is thine own virtue, thou hast it in common with no one. To be sure, thou wouldst call it by name and caress it, thou wouldst pull its ears and amuse thyself with it. And lo, then hast thou its name in common with the people, and hast become one of the people and the herd with thy virtue. Better for thee to say, ineffable is it, and nameless, that which is pain and sweetness to my soul, and also the hunger of my bowels. Let thy virtue be too high for the familiarity of names, and if thou must speak of it, be not ashamed to stammer about it. Thus speak and stammer, that is my good, that do I love, thus doth it please me entirely, thus only do I desire the good. Not as the law of a God do I desire it, not as a human law or a human need do I desire it, it is not to be a guidepost for me to super earths and paradises. An earthly virtue is it which I love, little prudence is therein, and the least everyday wisdom. But that bird built its nest beside me, therefore, I love and cherish it, now sitteth it beside me on its golden eggs. Thus shouldst thou stammer, and praise thy virtue. Once hadst thou passions, and calledst them evil. But now hast thou only thy virtues, they grew out of thy passions. Thou implantedst thy highest aim into the heart of those passions, then became they thy virtues and joys. And though thou wert of the race of the hot-tempered, or of the voluptuous, or of the fanatical, or the vindictive, all thy passions in the end became virtues, and all thy devils angels. Once hadst thou wild dogs in thy cellar, but they changed at last into birds and charming songstresses. Out of thy poisons brewedst thou balsam for thyself, thy cow, affliction, milkedst thou, now drinkest thou the sweet milk of her udder. And nothing evil groweth in thee any longer, unless it be the evil that groweth out of the conflict of thy virtues. My brother, if thou be fortunate, then wilt thou have one virtue and no more, thus goest thou easier over the bridge. Illustrious is it to have many virtues, but a hard lot, and many a one hath gone into the wilderness and killed himself, because he was weary of being the battle and battlefield of virtues. My brother, are war and battle evil. Necessary, however, is the evil, necessary are the envy and the distrust and the backbiting among the virtues. Lo, how each of thy virtues is covetous of the highest place, it wanteth thy whole spirit to be its herald, it wanteth thy whole power, in wrath, hatred, and love. Jealous is every virtue of the others, and a dreadful thing is jealousy. Even virtues may succumb by jealousy. He whom the flame of jealousy encompasseth, turneth at last, like the scorpion, the poison sting against himself. Oh, my brother, hast thou never seen a virtue backbite and stab itself? Man is something that hath to be surpassed, and therefore shalt thou love thy virtues, for thou wilt succumb by them. Thus spake Zarathustra. 6. The pale criminal. Ye do not mean to slay, ye judges and sacrificers, until the animal hath bowed its head. Lo, the pale criminal hath bowed his head, out of his eye speaketh the great contempt. Mine ego is something which is to be surpassed, mine ego is to me the great contempt of man, so speaketh it out of that eye. When he judged himself, that was his supreme moment, let not the exalted one relapse again into his low estate. There is no salvation for him who thus suffereth from himself, unless it be speedy death. Your slaying, ye judges, shall be pity, and not revenge, and in that ye slay, see to it that ye yourselves justify life. It is not enough that ye should reconcile with him whom ye slay. Let your sorrow be love to the Superman, thus will ye justify your own survival. Enemy it shall ye say but not villain, invalid it shall ye say but not wretch, fool shall ye say but not sinner. And thou, red judge, if thou wilt say audibly all thou hast done in thought, then would everyone cry, away with the nastiness and the virulent reptile. But one thing is the thought, another thing is the deed, and another thing is the idea of the deed. The wheel of causality doth not roll between them. An idea made this pale man pale. Adequate was he for his deed when he did it, but the idea of it he could not endure when it was done. Evermore did he now see himself as the doer of one deed. Madness, I call this, the exception reversed itself to the rule in him. The streak of chalk bewitched the hen, the stroke he struck bewitched his weak reason. Madness after the deed, I call this. Hearken, ye judges. There is another madness besides, and it is before the deed. Oh, ye have not gone deep enough into this soul. Thus speaketh the red judge, why did this criminal commit murder? He meant to rob. I tell you, however, that his soul wanted blood, not booty, he thirsted for the happiness of the knife. But his weak reason understood not this madness, and it persuaded him. What matter about blood, it said, wishest thou not, at least, to make booty thereby? Or take revenge? And he hearkened unto his weak reason, like lead lay its words upon him, thereupon he robbed when he murdered. He did not mean to be ashamed of his madness. And now once more laid the lead of his guilt upon him, and once more is his weak reason so benumbed, so paralyzed, and so dull. Could he only shake his head, then would his burden roll off, but who shake that head? What is this man? A mass of diseases that reach out into the world through the spirit, there they want to get their prey. What is this man? A coil of wild serpents that are seldom at peace among themselves, so they go forth apart and seek prey in the world. Look at that poor body. What it suffered and craved, the poor soul interpreted to itself, it interpreted it as murderous desire and eagerness for the happiness of the knife. Him who now turneth sick, the evil overtaketh, which is now the evil, he seeketh to cause pain with that which causeth him pain. But there have been other ages, and another evil and good. Once was doubt evil, and the will to self. Then the invalid became a heretic or sorcerer. As heretic or sorcerer he suffered, and sought to cause suffering. But this will not enter your ears, it hurteth your good people, ye tell me. But what doth it matter to me about your good people? Many things in your good people cause me disgust, and verily, not their evil. I would that they had a madness by which they succumbed, like this pale criminal. Verily, I would that their madness were called truth, or fidelity, or justice, but they have their virtue in order to live long, and in wretched self-complacency. I am a railing alongside the torrent, whoever is able to grasp me may grasp me. Your crutch, however, I am not. Thus spake Zarathustra. 7. Reading and writing. Of all that is written, I love only what a person hath written with his blood. Write with blood, and thou wilt find that blood is spirit. It is no easy task to understand unfamiliar blood. I hate the reading idlers. He who knoweth the reader, doeth nothing more for the reader. Another century of readers, and spirit itself will stink. Everyone being allowed to learn to read, ruineth in the long run not only writing but also thinking. Once spirit was God, then it became man, and now it even becometh populace. He that writeth in blood and proverbs doth not want to be read, but learnt by heart. In the mountains the shortest way is from peak to peak, but for that route thou must have long legs. Proverbs should be peaks, and those spoken to should be big and tall. The atmosphere rare and pure, danger near, and the spirit full of a joyful wickedness, thus are things well matched. I want to have goblins about me, for I am courageous. The courage which scareth away ghosts, createth for itself goblins, it wanteth to laugh. I no longer feel in common with you, the very cloud which I see beneath me, the blackness and heaviness at which I laugh, that is your thundercloud. Ye look aloft when ye long for exaltation, and I look downward because I am exalted. Who among you can at the same time laugh and be exalted? He who climbeth on the highest mountains, laugheth at all tragic plays and tragic realities. Courageous, unconcerned, scornful, coercive, so wisdom wisheth us, she is a woman, and ever loveth only a warrior. Ye tell me, life is hard to bear. But for what purpose should ye have your pride in the morning and your resignation in the evening? Life is hard to bear, but do not affect to be so delicate. We are all of us fine sumpter asses and assesses. What have we in common with the rosebud, which trembleth because a drop of dew hath formed upon it? It is true we love life, not because we are wont to live, but because we are wont to love. There is always some madness in love. But there is always, also, some method in madness. And to me also, who appreciate life, the butterflies, and soap bubbles, and whatever is like them amongst us, seem most to enjoy happiness. To see these light, foolish, pretty, lively little sprites flit about, that moveth Zarathustra to tears and songs. I should only believe in a God that would know how to dance. And when I saw my devil, I found him serious, thorough, profound, solemn. He was the spirit of gravity, through him all things fall. Not by wrath, but by laughter, do we slay. Come, let us slay the spirit of gravity. I learned to walk, since then have I let myself run. I learned to fly, since then I do not need pushing in order to move from a spot. Now am I light, now do I fly, now do I see myself under myself. Now there danceth a God in me. Thus spake Zarathustra. We would love to hear your feedback. Feel free to add a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.